Yeah, so my brain is not doing it today. So many attempts and just losing my words or yeah. So I filmed winding these up into balls, centre pole balls, using a cardboard knotty pin. My ball winder broke last year. It was just a cheap plastic one, um, and it got broken. I had a go at trying to fix it with super glue, and so did my husband, and it didn't work. And I just didn't want to buy another one, um, even though they're cheap and easy to come by. It was just I was just annoyed that it broke, and now it's just a piece of plastic rubbish, and it had nowhere else to go except landfill. So I know something in me just refused to go that way again. And I actually really love doing it by hand. I think these balls are just an object of beauty to my eye. It takes longer, but um, it's a process I enjoy. So I filmed that and had every intention of getting some footage of me knitting the colourwork beanie, and then I just didn't. But here it is. It is finished. I knitted it in 4 days at the expense of getting a lot of other things done. I'm really thrilled with it. I don't think all the small variations in colour are coming up. I'll have to watch the footage back a bit later and see, otherwise I might just take some special footage to lay over my talking. But you can see bits of brown in the contrast colour and sort of the dark and the more pale in the blue. I didn't gauge spots, I lived dangerously, and luckily it's a very decent sized beanie, a little bit slouchy but really it's a good fit. And I knitted it on 2.75mm needles, which is what the pattern called for. This is the pattern Subalpine Prance by the Craft Lizard, which is a free pattern online. And she suggested double pointed needles or magic loop, and so I tried first magic loop because I had a 2.75mm long cable needle which I'd used to knit a cot blanket, and I thought that would do the trick, but the cable was just so stiff and annoying, and then I realised that one end of the tips where the cable joined onto the needle was a bit damaged and the stitches kept getting stuck, and I told myself to persevere, and after another 3 or 4 rows of the brim I just thought I have to find something else because I'm not going to enjoy this. I did have 2.75mm needles, double pointed needles, which I'd never used before, and I have been wanting to learn how to use them, and so this was the opportunity. So I knitted the rest of this beanie on the double pointed needles, and it was okay. I just found it a little bit hard on my hand. I don't know if it was the needles or if it was like the knitting with the double pointed needles, or if it was the size, like the 2.75mm knitting on really small needles. I sort of didn't realise how hard it had been on my wrist, particularly until I was playing the piano this morning and just doing some work on a piece of music that I'm writing, and I just could feel some twinges and little sort of aches in my fingers, which is just a reminder to just take a little bit more care with what I'm doing with my hands. So that done, I have a lot left to do some fingerless gloves. I had every intention of doing colourwork fingerless gloves, but I think I might just do a solid colour just to make it a little easier. on my hands. I'll decide when I get to it. I might just find, I have found like a plain fingerless glove pattern, and I can just very easily add like a fleece stitch with the contrast colour if I want to. So that is the knitting. And for spinning, I have done my first bobbin of that stunningly beautiful lamb's wool that I talked about last week. I'm just loving this bin so much. I have done a whole basket of flip carded locks. It looks like there's heaps there, but it's probably only going to fill a quarter of the bobbin. I'd probably need to do at least 3.5 to 4 baskets of this sort of pile of beautiful fluffy goodness. And then that will be a 2-ply, and that will be the cowl to go, that will be knitted into a cowl to go with the beanie and the mitten. So I think I'm going to try a spin and chat to talk a little bit more in depth about some things that have been on my mind. I apologise if you're very experienced at knitting on DPNs and you're finding this a bit painful to watch. I am a complete newbie at it. Not complete, but I'm a newbie. So as I said, I knitted the beanie, which wasn't quite as awkward as this. I'm not sure if I could have just done it with 3 needles instead of the 4, but when the beanie got down quite small, I did reduce the number of DPN down to 3, and I just found it really stiff and hard. This is easier, but it's still awkward. So I've started the mitts, and it's the Onyx. There's no designer's name, it's just associated with a brand called Universal Yarns. I had quite a few free patterns on their website, and this was one of them. I wasn't looking for a free pattern in particular, it was just in my Ravelry queue. This was like the closest that I had in mind to the kind of fingerless gloves that I wanted to knit that was also going to take this weight of yarn, which is sport weight. And I nailed the gauge. I did a gauge box this time and I was spot on, so I'm using the needle sizes that the pattern called for. So I needed 2.75 mils for the cuffs, and of course this is what I have, a DPN. I didn't want to go and try and use the cable again. I really should have just chucked it in the bin, the other one, so that, you know, in a year or two's time when I'm thinking of, oh, I need a, you know, circular needle, that 2.75 mils, I'll use that one, and then realise why I hate those needles. I should just chuck them away. This is so slow. When I did the gauge swatch, I really loved the blue on its own, and there's sort of really subtle variations in the colour. I thought I won't do a fleece stitch for this, I'll just let the blue, I just really let the blue sing. And my friend told me that blue is the colour she loved. She loved to wear blue and natural colours, and I'm not sure what she meant by natural colours, if she meant like natural sheep colours, or if she meant like colours that you find in nature as opposed to bright modern poppy colours that really pop and are loud. Yeah, I don't know, so I'm just going to stick with the blue. My other preoccupation this week has been writing music, and I normally take a very long time to write one piece of music, and the music I write is not anything amazing. Like it's nothing technically difficult. I keep it pretty simple because I'm not really a composer. I'm just doing this for I'm just doing it for myself, and yeah, so I normally take a very long time to just compose a piece of music, but this week something different happened, and I have been working on lessons in Drought, and I've really only written a yarn over. Yes, actually, yes, it's a yarn over. I've really only written and sort of finished 2 pieces, which are the first 2. And so each piece in the lessons in Drought represent a season. So this drought that we're in has been going since autumn last year, and I don't feel like it's broken yet, and it really is wait and see what the rest of, well, we're only in the first week of spring, so we'll wait and see what spring does. The long range forecast is promising lots of wet weather, but the long range forecast has been completely wrong for the last 18 months that this drought's been going on. Just seems like, you know, in autumn last year they were promising some decent rain in winter, and we got almost nothing. And then they promised a wet spring, and it wasn't. And then they promised a wet summer, and it wasn't. Things started to improve a little bit in autumn of this year. But yeah, just doesn't feel like it's over. So I've written a piece of music for each season of this drought so far, or the plan is to write a piece of music for each season of this drought. So the first one is The Sky Keeps Promising Rain, and the second one is The Green Drought. And the Green Drought refers to the fact that in my part of the country the main agricultural industry is broadacre cropping, and it's all barley and canola, and these crops have been engineered to be very drought tolerant, and so both last winter and this winter, once winter comes along and all the crops, you know, the weather cools down and there's just that little bit of rain, the crops germinate and suddenly the landscape looks very green. And if you didn't know better and you came out here, you'd be thinking, what drought? You know, there's no drought here. It creates this blanket of green just creates a false sense of security, I think. And you don't hear or see how much distress the ecosystem is truly in. You see it and you can hear it when you go out into the bushlands. And so that's what I'm trying to capture in the Green Drought. Is like the first part of the piece is sort of about this sort of the green that can look very bucolic and pastoral, and then at the very end I'm just trying to create musically a sense of the actual distress that the land is in. I haven't really nailed that part yet. I've been trying lots of ideas and I haven't landed on anything yet. But I can play the piece as an almost finished piece of music when I want to. That's my dog having a scratch. I feel like I'm getting the hang of this a little bit. And then the third piece, I haven't worked out a title for it, but it's about the snakes. I might talk about that another time. The fourth piece is an impending sense of erasure. And again, that's something I'll maybe talk about another time. So the piece I have been working on is the fifth one, which is for this winter that's been. No, it's the sixth one for this winter that has been. I'm missing a season. Doesn't matter. And so this piece is called Waanyarra, which you heard a little bit of at the start of the video. And so some of the titles to the pieces refer more to the sort of collective experience of the drought, such as the green drought and the piece about the snakes. But Waanyarra and a couple of the others are very personal titles that just sort of the meaning behind them is personal to me. And Waanyarra was a place I visited after I'd been to the Bendigo Sheep and Wool Show. It's just this, it's really not much more than a place name on a map now, but it was a very busy mining town back in the gold rush days, and the only thing that's really left is a bush cemetery. And so I went out there and I was caught completely off guard by how incredibly emotional the place was and what it brought up to the surface within myself. And I spent weeks afterward really kind of processing that experience, and felt like, you know, when this sort of music started to, I keep getting these yarn overs at the start. Okay. When this music started to kind of emerge, and I knew that it was about that place, I still felt like it belonged in the Lessons in Drought for so many reasons. I think, so what the place did to me, as I said, it's a bush cemetery, so there weren't a lot of gravestones. The history is that it started out as an official cemetery with council oversight, and then in the 1890s the council told the township that that cemetery is closed now, and if anybody out here dies, you need to bury them in one of the bigger towns like Denali or Mollyogle. And the people of Waanyarra completely disregarded the council shutting down their cemetery and continued to bury their loved one out there. And so I was thinking about this while I was out there and realised that that meant that these people were burying their own by themselves. You know, there wasn't any official grave diggers or you know, council stepping in to take care of the actual logistics of burying someone. It was the families doing it themselves. And as I was walking around, I noticed like a lot of the graves didn't have headstones, they were just outlined on the ground with stones. And I noticed how many of them were very small, and realised they were all children and babies. And lots of adult-sized graves as well, but I just think in a big official town cemetery, the demographics aren't as obvious, but in this bush cemetery, it just really hit me. You know, there was one spot where there was just like 5 or 6 very small graves, all really close together, and you just knew that they were all children who had died in a very short time, and had all been more or less buried together, and their families would have buried the children themselves, and it got very emotional. And anyway, I kept walking around and sort of, I don't know, settled down. And I've been to a lot of cemeteries like that, you know, really isolated cemeteries out in the middle of nowhere, like out in the Flinders and the Adelaide Hills, where you do see there are a lot of graves of children. Often you'd have a lot of, I mean, there was high child mortality rates back then because we didn't have immunisation and the medication to stop epidemics of measles and diphtheria and smallpox. Did I say smallpox? No. Anyway, I guess it was, I went, those cemeteries that I visited in the past, I wasn't a mother at that point. Whereas, you know, here at Waanyarra this year, you know, I've got a family of my own, so it definitely affected me a lot more deeply. Anyway, I just sort of kept walking around and kind of got over the initial shock. And then as I was leaving the cemetery, I noticed there were these two big monuments just inside the gate with plaques on them. So I stopped to read them, and it listed everyone who was buried in this cemetery, so their names, when they were born and when they died and how long they lived for. And they were just extremely specific. And so there was, you know, there'd be a child name, and it would say next to it that this child lived for 30 minutes, and this child lived for 2 hours, and this one lived for 5 minutes. And it absolutely did for me. I mean, I was incredibly sad for the child, but my heart was with the mothers who only got to hold those babies' life in their arms for such a short period of time. And yeah, so I cried a bit driving home. And when I tried to talk about it with my mum and my husband and a friend of mine, they were all a bit, I don't know, a bit dismissive almost, like, oh, it was just, you know, times were hard back then and children died. It's like, I get that, I totally get that, but this just hit really deep. And I think it's just because it's been such a hard and emotional year anyway, where I have thought a lot about what's in store for my family with the drought, with, yeah, I'm sticking to my fingers. What's in store, you know, with the drought and with climate change, with the acidification of the internet and AI. There's the ever-growing inequality that is happening in our society as well as everywhere else. We are feeling it personally. So that's Waanyarra.